afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Matt Barbosa, and today we'll be having a special pre-draft show. I'm joined here with my good friend, Sean Grossi, the second. And Sean, let me know what are your thoughts, for this year's draft class. What do you think is going to happen?
This draft class is stacked with fantastic prospects that we've seen play a great college season, probably one of the best we've gotten to see in our lives. And there's a lot of defensive help out there on the board for anyone that needs defensive help. So I'm looking at teams that are like Cleveland and Jacksonville, want to build an identity to try to stop some high-powered offenses. I'm looking at teams that just need to add more depth. And I'm looking at teams that just need that one final piece. So I think Houston, even though a quarterback would be nice, could easily get a very good defensive lineman or even secondary help to just bolster that defense even more and possibly be the defense to be contended with in the AFC South. I also think that Oakland is a couple pieces away, considering now getting Marshawn Lynch. That's going to be a very good squad to have there. And when you look at it, when we've got other pieces available, any team could be very dangerous after this draft.
I agree. There's a lot of good teams that, aren't that many pieces away. And this draft, like you said, is loaded with defensive playmakers. It's loaded with offensive playmakers. It's definitely one of the most loaded drafts we've seen in the past couple of years. So I think a lot of teams, with good drafting, can make a really good jump. It seems like the Browns pick first every year, and they're still picking first. So
yeah, as Palmer would say, trust the process.
Let's do it. For the next topic here, we'll discuss who do you see as five. It doesn't have to be top five overall. Just who are your five favorite prospects in this draft? Who are five players that you want them on your team, regardless of position, regardless of need? There's just something about these players that you like. Something stands out about their game to you.
Personally, I've got 2 and 2, and then that last one is a very toss-up because I see two very good I see two very good defensive linemen that Washington would be phenomenal with, and I see two wideouts that I would love to see in Washington as well. The last one that I would say would probably be a secondary help. So my two for defensive line, obviously I can't get Myles Garrett, but depending on how the draft works out, if I can get Malik McDowell or Jonathan Allen, those two right there would be fantastic for Washington's line to bolster it, especially after the loss of Swaggy going down to Tampa with Djax. So having that for a defensive bolstering, that's good. And then when we look at the offensive side, in terms of the wideouts, I would love to see either Corey Davis or Mike Williams to help Kirk Cousins get pieces that they lost. Yeah. Not only good receivers, but size, which is very needed now, considering Terrell Pryor for Washington is 5'11".
He's a big guy.
He's not. Yeah, he's
not
pretty
tall,
good.
But he's a pretty big dude.
Yeah, well, there's a big size gap though. You got Terrell Pryor, and then you got the 5'8" stud in Jamal Crawford, or the Crawford. That's bad. Crowder. Yeah, Jamison Crowder. It's fantastic to see these two play, but you also need to have players in between those height differences, considering we're talking a guy that's over 6 foot in Terrell Pryor, and then we have a guy that's under 5'9". He's 5'8", Jamison Crowder, and it's going to be hard trying to get him always the ball, especially if you always have to rely on just dumping it over the safety. And then the last pick for the secondary, I would love to see Malik Hooker or Marshawn Lattimore be a Washington Redskin. That would be fantastic, especially in terms of what has plagued that Washington defense year after year, the injury bug, and it always comes to the secondary. So having some depth into the secondary will help them instill a good foundation for where they need to go later, considering probably one of the best draft picks we've ever seen for a franchise pickup, Darrell Green, the only time Washington Redskin that played.
Free agency worked out for you guys.
Free agency this year with Josh Norman, but I mean, our best cornerback overall was Darrell Green. 20 years, 3 Super Bowls.
Can't argue with the numbers there, folks. Me personally, five prospects that I've loved, through this whole process. Number one for me, because I feel like the Eagles really need a running back, is Florida State running back Dalvin Cook. I think he's explosive. He can play in all 3 downs. That's something that's highly regarded now. And there's just something about him when I watch his film. He's got that burst and that speed that I think that we really need in our offense from the running back position. He's tough enough to go inside. He can catch just as well. He's got good protection. I think he's a very complete back and someone who I think would be a great pickup for the Eagles at 14. Another person who people might kind of question at 14. We just signed 2 receivers, but Corey Davis from Western Michigan. He's another wide receiver who I really like. He's got size, speed, everything you want from a wide receiver. Good route running. Played every game he could possibly play at in college. Good durability. Maybe I'm crazy. Just reminds me of T.O., small school kid. Really big build, very athletic, kind of slept on.
Or even Randy Moss on top of that too.
Randy Moss, even better. You know what I mean? There's just something about his game too. Just like Dalvin Cook, when you watch the tape, they just bring it, and I'd love to have that on the team. Now on the defensive side of the ball, because that's everyone's biggest concern, and this draft is filled with defensive players. We both love Marshon Lattimore and Malik Hooker. I don't think the Eagles necessarily need a safety as pressing as we need cornerbacks, because we have Malcolm Jenkins and Rodney McLeod back there. But if Marshon Lattimore could fall to the 14th spot by some grace of God, that'd be amazing, because he's one hell of a player. He's got great film. He brings everything. He brings everything. You know what I mean? He brings everything you want from a corner. And there's something about him too. You know what I mean? It's just all these guys. There's just something about their game that's just really good, and they play hard and they play fast. The next guy that really intrigues me is Reuben Foster from Alabama. Sideline to sideline guy, leader, big hitter, everything you want in the position. You know what I mean? All these guys are complete guys, but there's questions with him, in terms of that issue that happened at the draft. At the combine. I don't think that's a big deal. I didn't really read too much into it. I don't think many people did. Then there's that drug the drug test thing. But,
where it was diluted, yeah.
It was diluted. As long as you didn't pee and it wasn't completely positive, that's good for me. I personally, I don't care if he's smoking a little weed.
I don't
as
mind.
long as he's on the field Sunday, calling the defense right and making plays. Finally, my last prospect, who I'd really love to have, I don't think he'll slide there, is Solomon Thomas, the defensive lineman from Stanford. Just a big physical guy, great motor. He's played against top competition. I think he'd be an excellent addition over there on the defensive end spot opposite Brandon Graham. You've got Brandon Graham there. We've got Cox. We just signed Timmy Jernigan. We've got Curry there, who's a question mark. He plays well. Is he going to make that jump? You can never know for sure. We signed Chris Long through free agency, but that's it's a short-term pickup. He's here for 2 years maybe?
2-3 years, yeah, something like that.
Who knows what kind of production you actually get from someone at that spot? That's more of a name,
But at the same time, he could bring experience as well. Now, I've got a question for you. What do you find interesting about Dalvin Cook over someone that I would personally love seeing either be the replacement for Torrey Smith, your newly acquired slot receiver, or being the next possibly good running back, considering all your running backs that you've had that are franchise guys you've drafted, when you look at Brian Westbrook and Shady McCoy especially? What do you think Dalvin Cook has over someone like Christian McCaffrey, who is very versatile in that aspect?
Nothing to take away from Christian. He's a heck of a player as well. I think has more all-purpose yards in college than anyone's ever had. I don't know. There's just something about Dalvin Cook that when I put him on film, I love the burst. I love the explosiveness. Not that McCaffrey doesn't have it. He's got quickness. He has elusiveness, but I like the team. I like the tape. The games that Dalvin Cook's played. The competition he's played against, playing down there in the SEC.
Do you think it would benefit Cook, like say Philadelphia picked up Christian McCaffrey, and down in the 19th spot, there's a familiar teammate, a team that needs another running back who needs to be the speed back and versatile back? How do you feel if Dalvin Cook went to Tampa Bay?
I wouldn't necessarily, be upset at that. I can actually see them, picking them up. He would be a great addition there. They have good places there in the passing game. You'd have to respect Jameis now with Deshaun Jackson stretching the field. Mike Evans is operating down low, big boy. If Dalvin Cook gets thrown in there, he can run it in between. He can run it outside. You can throw it to him on screen game. He's a very complete player.
Yeah, I think, and not only that, you look at the chemistry, considering Winston and Cook were at Florida State together.
Florida State teammates as well. Yeah,
Exactly. So
that's
that's going to be something that would definitely bolster Cook through
keep an
the
eye out for that.
training camp as well. So.
I'll ask you who's your top receiver in this class?
Ooh, that's a good one, considering Corey Davis does have great skills, but I mean, we've seen the production that Mike Williams has had, and being paired with a great quarterback that Deshaun Watson is in Clemson, they won a national title, and Mike Evans was a big part of that too. So having someone that's just coming off of that, having a little bit of a swagger, but also the skill set and the confidence going into the NFL, I think that it's going to absolutely be very useful for any team that's picking him up. So I think that would be good for. I would love to have him in Washington, but some places would say San Diego. I think Corey Davis would fit better in San Diego than.
They're going to be gone quick. They're probably going to be all gone by maybe like picks 20.
I don't know. I've seen projections where Williams, the lowest I've seen. I want him to go to Washington, but the lowest I've seen him go was Baltimore, which is the pick right before Washington. So.
Yeah, it's Baltimore. You could use wide receiver. I could see them taking any one of them.
Absolutely, exactly.
John Ross, Corey Davis.
Of course, if it's a very defensive class, being that it's a very defensive class, and everyone yeah, and if someone does take a lot of defense, possibly O.J. Howard.
There's a lot of good guys on offense coming out of the draft this year.
Yeah, possibly O.J. Howard might drop that low too.
He's another guy who's probably dependent on the quarterback position, and the always crazy top 10 could easily slip out. Either he was could be a top 10 pick or end of the first round, middle round.
Yeah.
There's really no set place for him to go, but definitely a top 10 talent is what I'm seeing.
Absolutely.
On this part of the show, we're going to now discuss our top 10s for our mock drafts, as the draft is tonight. We're going to make our predictions. Hopefully, we get it right, because that'll mean the Eagles will get a good pick at 14. So, let's see.
Starting with the guest of me from inside the strike zone, I believe that the top 10 picks will go like this. The Cleveland Browns pick up Myles Garrett, number 1.
What a shocker.
Yeah, considering they've been tossing around either going Trubisky or going Garrett, and I think that would set the tone of where the draft goes, honestly.
Yeah, but I think Myles Garrett's a lock.
It's a lock. It should be a lock, but there's a lot of stories coming out of that Cleveland camp. It's not easy to tell. Number 2, going to San Francisco, I think Ryan Ramczyk will go to San Francisco, especially.
Ryan Ramczyk.
Well,
shocker here.
When you hear John Lynch saying, we're going to make a pick that no one's going to really expect, that leads me to think that they want to make sure that the offensive line is shored up for the quarterback. That way, when they do pick up their stud in the quarterback and the guy they believe can be the franchise, or even wait a year and have Cousins go there, with what's all going on in Washington, it could be possible that if you build now for the offensive line and you have the same situation that Dallas fell upon themselves, that could be the formula that John Lynch is looking at as success.
It does start in the trenches.
And then going to Chicago, I think Marshawn Lattimore goes to Chicago, help that secondary.
That's an easy pick there.
Jacksonville will pick up O.J. Howard.
A little bit of a shake-up there.
A little bit of shake-up.
But I can definitely see that. More weapons for Blake Bortles.
Exactly.
Someone closer on the inside as well.
And someone to help that offensive line, too, with the blocking.
Block, too.
Exactly.
Should be good. They didn't get much production from Julius Thomas. That move didn't really work out.
But now having someone to complement him as well, considering I think Julius Thomas had a little bit too much of a shock of, I have to do a lot more blocking now.
Yeah.
Considering he was more of the receiver.
He was dealing with injuries, too, a little bit.
Exactly, and he's also more of the receiving type anyway.
Type, yeah.
So, the Tennessee Titans at number 5, I believe they go after the linebacking stud out of Alabama in Reuben Foster.
Foster, top 5. Okay.
Top 5. I honestly think he would be that big of a pick.
Oh,
and
no,
especially
I love him, yeah.
especially a team that's needing some pieces on the defensive side too.
He could set the tone immediately, come in and start day one.
Exactly, and I think they would have enough time before their next pick where they can pick up John Ross as well. So
that'd be big for them.
Number 6, Marlon Humphreys going to New York. Granted, everyone's wondering if they pick up a quarterback, but I think they need to go back to defensive roots and try to build a defense worth competing against the Patriots.
That's the last time they were good.
Exactly.
Back to AFC Championship games, one of the greatest defenses in the NFL.
Exactly, when they were so close, but they had very good pieces to build upon.
Even with Mark Sanchez, they were still doing stuff.
Exactly. Of course, the defense took a lot of pressure off of Sanchez as well, which I think says a lot about Sanchez, where he's kind of dependent on needing a very good defense to succeed.
He's not that good.
Number 7, I think the San Diego Chargers, going back to what I was alluding to, Corey Davis will be their wideout to complement their big guy out there.
Yeah, Keenan Allen's a hell of a receiver. I can see him doing some good things with Corey Davis there. Could potentially maybe even be better than him, maybe.
Exactly. Of course, then again, when you draft the big guy, Keenan Allen can easily do other stuff on the other side of the ball that can scare defenses completely white.
And that's great because Corey Davis he's not a small dude either, but he brings that speed that you would get from, a smaller guy. So
exactly.
That's a good pickup there.
The Carolina Panthers, thinking now that, Fournette's still on the board, possibly we can get Fournette to Carolina. I think they go after Solomon Thomas and have someone to complement Kejuan Short, who they just extended his contract now. So I think they need to get a defense back together. Granted, there are some secondary holes that they do need, but I think there's other players down in the secondary that they can pick up to bolster that secondary. But having someone to pair up with Kejuan Short will definitely help that defensive line and build a trench.
The better D-line you have, the better chance you have of winning games.
Exactly. Battles are won in the trenches, and defenses win championships. That's how all the sayings go, and how pretty much when we see a champion, that's what they win on. Is those fundamentals.
You got to be able to stop the ball.
Exactly. Number 9, Cincinnati will go after Jonathan Allen.
Another nice defensive lineman. And the AFC North has always been known for defenses, whether it was Baltimore or Pittsburgh or the very, very old Cleveland Browns. And the Bengals when they were known as the Bungles occasionally. But when they got to their one Super Bowl, they did have a pretty stellar defense, and I think they need to start going back to looking at defensive pieces as well, considering a lot of their good guys that they have are starting to get away from their prime and starting to wonder if they can get to a Super Bowl, even though they have the Red Rocket and the freaking A.J. Green. And then my final pick for the top 10, Buffalo goes after Jamal Adams out of LSU. A tiger of a different stripe, because I think they need a good secondary to help build that defense, considering this is a defensive draft where they need to look at the right pieces for that defenses, considering they have a pretty decent front seven, but it's the secondary that gets burned by good wideouts, especially when you have New England, who has Chris Hogan, who was a very good pickup for New England. You've got Julius Edelman. You've got Gronk to worry about. So building a second... Brandon Cooks now, too. Exactly. There's a lot of pieces you need to worry about coming off of just New England alone that you need to make sure that you can build a defense better than New England's offense. That's true, and he's a dog. That's a great player there. I can see him in a Buffalo Bills jersey.
Yeah. So
for my mock top 10 draft, I have number 1 first, the Cleveland Browns, taking Myles Garrett, number 1 overall.
Very good, solid pick there.
Yeah, I don't think that's, for the past 3 months, I think that's the only thing I've ever seen.
I've heard different stories, especially coming into the week, where they want to make it a little more unpredictable. Yeah.
Number 2, I've got San Francisco picking Mitchell Trubisky, quarterback.
That's a shocker, but
yeah.
At the same time, they do need a quarterback, but I don't know if they have the necessary pieces in front of them to pick them up.
I just feel like there's such there'll be such a pressing need on quarterbacks, on this night, prior than that we've been led up to know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they'll get this guy early. The next pick I have, number 3, is the Chicago Bears, and I have them taking Solomon Thomas, the defensive lineman from Stanford. They've got to bolster the line, get back to rushing the passer. Excuse me. Get back to the roots of playing, like you said, tough football up there in the north.
Especially for the Bears.
Oh yeah. Number 4, I've got Jonathan Allen, another defensive lineman, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. A very defensive team. They've added defensive pieces last year, and I think they continue to bolster that with an excellent lineman They also added, Malik Jackson in the offseason. So I think, these pieces to their defensive line will be a huge upgrade where, they've got to go get Andrew Luck and Marcus Mariota, who are sitting back there all day.
Very, very true point. And whoever Houston picks up, too.
Whoever Houston picks up. Maybe they pick one of these quarterbacks. Maybe they, play pretty well. You never know.
Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Kaiser, Patrick Mahomes.
Trubisky, who knows? Number 5 is where I have Jamal Adams going to the Tennessee Titans. Like I mentioned earlier with the Jaguars, you're in a division where you've got some good quarterbacks and people slinging the ball. Say what you want about Blake Bortles, but him and the Allens brothers, they can play some football up there.
Yeah, they can.
So, you get this guy who can come in there and lead the defense from a secondary standpoint, which is huge.
Have almost a player, almost as like, have another quarterback who could also be a very influential, like the late great Sean Taylor. Considering he led a secondary
I see this guy up
beautifully
there with the Sean Taylor, Troy Polamalu, Brian Dawkins. The way they're describing this man, the way his film looks, he looks the part. He had an amazing pro day. ran like 4.3, low 4.3s. I think it was unofficial, but still, that's
impressive.
Still impressive for a 220-pound safety.
Yeah, and that 220 pounds going at a low 4.3.
He's gonna hit people.
He's gonna come in like a speeding bullet.
So I see Jamal Adams making a nice little niche for himself there in Tennessee. Number 6, I've got Leonard Fournette going to the New York Jets. I think he's just too good of a player to pass up on at that position. I think maybe they definitely do have other needs. They're the Jets. They have lots of needs. But at this point, I think it's his best player available. If Leonard Fournette is as good as what he's hyped up to be, if he can potentially come in and do half of what Adrian Peterson did, once when he come in, you make that pick at number 6 every day.
Yeah, and
it takes the pressure off of Christian Hackenberg or whoever they want to throw out at quarterback because that situation.
Bryce Petty somewhere in there, yeah.
So maybe they don't even necessarily need to have a quarterback. You hand it to him 30 times, and the defense is still pretty decent. So.
Yeah, possibly you even have Leonard Fournette if he's as good as he is. It might be something that the Jets look back into not so far past and look at someone that could be as influential as Curtis Martin, a very good running back that the Jets had.
And Jets fans would be happy to get back to that time.
Exactly. Where they had some hope.
Hey, got to get the quarterback. Chad Pennington. Number 7 for the L.A. Chargers. Excuse me, I almost said San Diego. I've got Malik Hooker, safety. I've got a good friend who's a Chargers fan, and he was devastated when they let go of Eric Weddle. I'm a big Eric Weddle fan too. He plays great ball.
Plays very good ball, and I'm happy to say I love him in Baltimore.
The L.A. Chargers let go of him, and this year he was the number 1 rated Pro Football Focus safety. So that goes to show you that I think the Chargers will see Malik Hooker on the board at number 7, and think that maybe we can get another
Eric Weddle start building the defense again
for another 10+ years. So I just see that as a no-brainer for them down there. Number 8, the Carolina Panthers. There's a lot of controversy. They could go a whole bunch of ways here, but I have them going with Christian McCaffrey.
That's a very big pickup.
Number 8 for the Panthers. You've got a guy in Cam who literally does it all. I mean, Kelvin Benjamin's okay, but he barely did anything last year, and they were irrelevant last year. You give him a guy like Christian McCaffrey, someone who could, take a lot of the pressure off of him, who can touch the ball almost 30 times. It doesn't have to be runs, but, you can design a way to get him the ball almost 30 times a game. That's huge. He's an elite playmaker. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got everything you'd want for a playmaker. His 3-cone is great, 20-yard shuttle is great. So I think that'd be a good pickup. Some crazy read options with him and Cam. Ron Rivera could do a lot of good things with that down there. Number 9 to the Bengals, I've got Marshawn Lattimore.
That's a nice pickup.
You're in a division where Antonio Brown's ripping you up. Joe Flacco's no scrub, and God forbid the Browns figure it out this year with a quarterback. You know what I mean? So, pick Marshawn Lattimore. He's probably the best player available at that point. He's probably the best corner in this draft, a true shutdown corner, and I think he'd be a big addition up there in the gritty AFC North. And then finally at number 10. For the Buffalo Bills, I have them taking the elite and one of my favorite players in this entire draft, Reuben Foster, the elite linebacker from Alabama. Just an all-around playmaker, a stud. Kills it from sideline to sideline. Someone who would come in immediately, day one, and set the tone for Buffalo's defense, which is which is kind of losing its identity, I feel like. They've been regarded as this defensive presence, the past 4 or 5 years, but I feel like lately, as of the past 2 or 3, they haven't had that same edge. So I think you put Reuben Foster in there, he could spark something and maybe get that defense back to being what they used to be known for.
Yeah, I agree with that, considering especially when they had who's in Miami now? The Kiko Alonso, yeah. All the hype around Kiko Alonso, especially when he went to Philly.
He played well there. Didn't do too well in Philly. Had an injury. The whole team in Philly was a debacle with Chip Kelly. Everything was a crap show.
Yeah. But I think that's a very good pickup to reestablish a defensive presence, considering when you look at Buffalo, especially when they went on their historic 4 times to the Super Bowl, and even more historically lost all 4 times, I think it's a very good presence to see what they're doing here in terms of trying to actually get back to a defense and try to build a defense and then supplement the offense later on.
Yeah, because there's plenty of playmakers to look at because everyone's taking these offensive guys. A lot of good offensive guys will drop down. A lot of good defensive guys will drop down.
Exactly.
This will be really interesting. There'll be a lot of guys in the 2nd and 3rd round who will surprise people.
Now that we said our top 10s, I've got a question thinking about the unpredictability.
Always. It's always unpredictable. What do you got?
Where do you think the surprise trade will come in?
Surprise trade. There's always 1 or 2, I feel like. You know what I mean? Every year in the draft, there's always a team that does it, whether it's on the draft, whether it's, a couple days before. But usually on draft night is when it's very suspenseful and, it makes for an interesting shake-up in people's predictions. I'd have to look probably at either the Titans or the Browns because they have 2 first-round picks. So they just, they have the easiest leverage, but they also strike me as 2 teams that would maybe want to pick people in those spots. I think maybe if you look at to a team in the later rounds, in the end of the round, like, say, the Steelers perhaps, maybe a player like Corey Davis is sliding. Someone, maybe like someone that you didn't expect would slide. They would jump up. A team that wouldn't necessarily, be impacted in giving up a lot of draft picks. They could give up their draft picks, get one player, and it wouldn't impact them in the long run. They have a foundation set up. So I'd have to say maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe the Green Bay Packers.
The Packers would be an interesting pickup.
Maybe the defensive lineman falls, and maybe Solomon Thomas is there at number 12. They want to jump in. The Browns have 2 first-round picks, so they trade back with them or something.
Possibly. I think there could be a possibility. One of the probably the only team you don't see on the round of 32. What about New England?
The New England Patriots.
Say they jump up and try to get someone from the safety position to complement Devin McCourty up at top.
I could see
Or
that.
Patrick Chung, I should say. Patrick Chung up at top. And complement him with a young guy so he can learn under him.
Definitely can't
And you
be
have
the
those 2
Patriots, though.
corners in Gilmore and Butler.
That could be a nice combo right there.
Exactly, and all they would have to do, you look at Cleveland, you want a quarterback, you take a DN and you still need a quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo.
You never know. They were saying he could be worth a first-round pick. That's what they were trying to get
Exactly,
for
and
in the year.
New England not having a first-round pick, picking up a big safety like that.
If they could get in there. The Saints also.
And that would fill the
have
need
2
to...
first-round picks. Look
That's
out for
right.
them too.
Yeah, the Saints do have first 2 round
They
picks.
traded up a couple years back to get Brandon Cooks.
And now they have the pick from New England, actually.
They have the pick from New England, and so, don't rule them out either. They could trade up, but I don't know. I feel like this draft is so good that a lot of teams are content, at staying where they are unless there's a run on quarterbacks or corners, early in the first round. But, well, that's going to be a wrap for us tonight, folks. I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank my guest, the host of In the Strike Zone, our very own Sean Grassi II. Thanks for joining us, Sean. Thank you for your insight.
Pleasure being here,
thank
Barbosa.
You for your production help as well. This doesn't do itself. Have a great draft night. Everyone have a great draft night. Be safe. Remember that we all love football, 32 teams, but we all love the same game.
We all enjoy sportsmanship.
Good night, USA.